the feasibility report. As a reminder, always remember to check out modules at the beginning of the week. Under assignments, I'm going to switch this to show by day. We have our new assignment, the feasibility report. And you will write a feasibility report based on a proposal idea and a feasibility study that you conduct. And so here is the assignment for the feasibility report. A feasibility study report summarizes a proposed activity or project and states whether or not the particular activity or project is realistic and practical based on what you learned from your feasibility study. So for this particular assignment, think of something that will make Houston-Tillotson better. So some suggestions might be a child care facility, an on-site gaming room, football team, off-site apartment-style housing facility, newly updated computers, computer lab, a new major. These are just some things I've heard students mention in the past. And so your task for the report is to come up with this campus need. You'll conduct some research, and then you'll write your findings in your feasibility report. And chapter 26 in our textbook goes over feasibility reports in more detail. These are the headings of your report as listed in our textbook. You can follow this precisely, or you can choose not to. But there's some things, that you'll definitely need, like your method, how you evaluate your method. For criteria, you're determining the criteria you're using to decide whether or not what you're proposing is feasible. We're going to talk more about all of that in just a second. And so I want to work backwards. So we'll begin by the first week working on this project. You beginning your feasibility study. I recommend that you get started on that early. And so that essentially will include library research, for example, depending on what you're doing, maybe reaching out to members of the HT community. So, for example, if I want to create a mentoring program on campus, maybe what I would do is reach out to about 10 students, 10 of my friends, who are students, and maybe I could create, a survey on social media that they can complete, or maybe I talk to one or two of them and kind of get their opinions about it, or if I have a friend or relative who is in the workplace and who mentors other students or kids, maybe get their perspective. But the point is to determine whether or not what you're proposing is feasible for our campus. Okay, so the first thing you'll do is a feasibility study, and at the end of the week, you will submit to me a one-page memo that just kind of documents what you did and what you found. So you'll identify what you're proposing for your feasibility study, what kinds of research you conducted, what you found, what you learned, the kind of feasibility you're researching, and then your plan for completing it. So, for example, if you look down at number 2, to complete the feasibility study, it goes into a little bit more detail. But, are you, do you need to do or you need to conduct a research for space feasibility? So, for example, we're a small campus, nearly every space is used, and maybe you want to create this multimedia, high-tech lab that can be used for, new engineering majors, for computer science majors, and for, English majors for design classes. And so, is there a space where we can do that? And then how would you figure that out? How would you learn that? And it may be something that, you may just know, I know that there's this space in such and such place that we could possibly use. Is it even operational? You want to think about the budget, the fiscal, feasibility, and so what will it cost? How will where the money come from? And stuff like that. Okay. And then you begin making decisions about the feasibility of what you're proposing. And so what you may even find is that maybe it isn't feasible. Or maybe it isn't feasible at this time. But maybe in the long run, maybe there's some things that need to be done. So maybe HT has no money to do these things, but long-term plan is to start raising funds or writing grants to find money for it. Okay, and then from there, we'll submit a working draft and a peer review before we submit our final draft. Make sure you are reading chapter 26 in our textbook. It talks about what a feasibility report is. So, to determine whether large changes are practical and desirable, decision makers usually ask consultants of some of their employees to conduct an extensive research. This research is called a feasibility study. The results are presented in a feasibility report. And so essentially, this is what we're doing. Okay. So one thing that you want to think about when doing your feasibility report is think about the multiple alternatives. Your purpose for the feasibility report is to convince. So think about your feasibility report will be written to Dr. Burnett, and you have this idea, and instead of just going to her and saying we need to do this because HT needs it, you demonstrate that you've done the research and that you've thought about alternatives. So here, why is it important to consider alternatives? In some cases, you need to tell decision makers why they have to make a choice in the first place. They need a detailed explanation of the problem before they can appreciate the urgency of considering alternative courses of action. Okay. And then it gives more information about writing that. And so if you remember in the feasibility report final draft assignment, I had listed possible subheadings. And so, as I said, you can definitely go with these, or if you feel like your report would flow better using different subheadings, you can do that too. And then this chapter just kind of goes into kind of some things to do. So, for example, when you're conducting your research, it talks about the reasons why you want to do that. If you want to refer back to chapter 6 and 7, it provides more advice on conducting research. These are the kinds of sources that you could possibly, reach out to. Avoid bias. Consider creating tables for analyzing the information you gather. So, for example, if you, say if you create a questionnaire and you put it on your social media and you ask individuals, and it may not even be individuals who are only HT students. It could be, anyone who is, part of your social, part of that social media, or maybe you create a couple of questionnaires for them to answer. If you say you interview a couple of different people, or say, you conduct some other kind of research, you can demonstrate that in tables and in charts. And then it just goes on and tells you how to plan it. So I really recommend that you read this chapter carefully. You won't have to turn in an outline, but if it helps you in planning, I definitely recommend that you do it. And then it goes into more detail about creating the major components of your feasibility report. Okay, so again, just read through that really closely. And then I'll show you here at the end of the chapter. There is a sample feasibility report. So in like manner, you'll create it in a memo format. They've included a summary. You don't have to. Introduction. And then test a physical property. So you see here, instead of saying, calling this alternatives and then criteria, they call it exactly what they're doing. And then these are the things that they tested for: retention, opacity. They provide some visual data. Again, you don't have to do that. But the visual does help tell the story, so it's up to you. Okay, then they go into conclusions and recommendations. So some of these things can sort of be embedded, or they can stand alone. One thing you definitely want to think about is the budget, is the cost. And so hope that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Talk to you later.